Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of What's on My Desk. Once again, just a few random watches that ended up on my desk. I try as much as I can not to come up with a theme when it comes to doing these episodes. Today, I brought the Harry Winston dual time in all PVD. I also bought the new Royal Oak Tourbillon from Audemars Piguet, the skeleton. And I brought this plain Jane Piaget with me in rose gold. First, let's talk about this Harry Winston. Now, I'm sure you've seen this watch before. It was executed actually in their Zalium material. The first thing they came out with was a limited edition of 300 pieces. This is a regular production watch post the production of that limited edition, which was really a good success. So they decided to come out with sort of a regular version, a non-limited edition. And they did this guy in a PVD. Boy, did they do this in the PVD. The entire watch is pretty much black, including the rotor. Even the rotor was PVD'd on this watch. I mean, I guess they had some extra PVD laying around and they just started to go to town on this watch. The buckle, usually the inner side of the buckle usually stays in stainless steel. They don't usually PVD that, they usually just do the outer part. No, these guys went all out and really made out a blackout watch. In fact, the only thing that's not black on this watch is the indicators that you see on a dial for the dual AM, PM indicators, which is actually pretty interesting. You don't usually see this on dual time watches. Now you have your regular time, you have your second time zone, and you have the date here, but you have 1, 2 day-night indicators. Now, how useful is that? Actually, it's pretty useful. There was an episode where I basically said majority of the complications are not useful on the watch. There should be information link up here somewhere. For somebody like myself that travels a lot, that wants to have 2 time zones on the watch, a day-night indicator on the watch is also very useful, especially when I go to places like Hong Kong, where day is night and night is day between home. I can quickly look at the time and say, you know what, it's nighttime at home, maybe I should not call my kids. What do I personally like about this watch? First of all, I like the size of this watch. It is a 44 millimeter. It's fairly thick too, so it wears pretty big on the wrist. Love the rubber strap, very versatile. Let's go swimming with this watch. Power reserve in this watch is 45 hours, which means that this is your daily wear. If you're not taking it off, if you're only taking it off your wrist when you go to bed, this watch will never stop on you as long as you keep it wound and keep wearing it. Price tag, $40,500. You can pick this watch up brand new, anywhere from 40 to 50% off. And when a secondary market, when this watch is pre-owned, especially if the PVD gets scratched up, which I talked about before again, you're gonna pick this watch up probably at 40 cents on a dollar, maybe even a third of its cost. I feel like Harry Winston should have priced this watch in the 20s. I just don't see why this watch should retail more than that over Royal Oak Offshore or Royal Oak Dual Time from AP. They make majority of their money on jewelry, so watches are more or less a bonus to them. But nevertheless, I take my hat off to Harry Winston because this is a beautifully executed watch. I love the way it looks, I love the way it feels on the wrist, and overall aesthetically, I give it an A+. Next, I'm going to talk about yet another newcomer in the Royal Oak line from Audemars Piguet, and this thing is a true beauty. It is the skeleton Royal Oak from Audemars Piguet. Again, jumping on a bandwagon of the skeleton pieces. They're open work stainless steel, both the 39 millimeter and the 41 millimeter in rose and stainless steel are selling like hotcakes. The stainless steel open work Royal Oak and 41 millimeter trades almost twice its retail value, almost as much as the rose gold. It's ridiculous. I think their original retail on the stainless steel was $42,000, and today people are asking over $70 for them. Highly coveted, highly collectible, no longer made, and collectors are jumping all over for it. Again, aesthetically a beautiful watch. And they figured if the market can sustain and can trade over retail value, why not come up with a tourbillon such as this gorgeous timepiece and make 50 pieces of them? And this is a limited edition of 50 pieces. And the market should sustain them as well. And guess what? Case in point, this watch retails for $220,500. Not sure what the $500 is for. And you'd be hard pressed to pick this watch up anything under $200,000 brand new. In fact, you'd be hard pressed to find one of these. They only made 50 of them, and a lot of them are already sold out. What do I think? I think it's an absolute genius move by Audemars Piguet, showing off a beautiful tourbillon movement such as this, arguably in the most popular line of watches besides Rolex today, which is the Royal Oak AP. Was a genius move. They will sell all 50 of them, and these guys will hold their value to the tune of almost their retail value. Now, they're not going to be like the stainless steel skeleton 41 millimeter, the regular ones, just because the retail price is so high. Not a lot of guys out there dropping 200 grand on these watches, but nevertheless, a watch that retails for $220,000 and sells for 200 is actually extremely successful. This is what's called a no frills watch. because really all they did is they're just a plain tourbillon. It's comparable to the Royal Oak tourbillon with the blue dial and rose gold, except this one is skeleton, showing off the beautiful tourbillon. Manual wind, as a lot of these tourbillons are. I mean, to make this an automatic, maybe they still will, you know, just if this is successful, they may come up with this watch in an automatic. Again, same thing sort of over and over, but if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. I mentioned that in one of the previous, I think, Q&A Tuesdays, where we talked about these companies making the same thing over and over and over. But A+ on the look, A+ on the price, A+ on holding its value. And again, remember guys, I'm biased. AP happens to be my favorite brand. So, and most every time have a positive opinion on their watches. Last but not least, I brought this plain Jane Piaget. You guys are probably asking, how does this fit into the other two watches that I just talked about? It really doesn't fit into any theme. Well, that's not what I'm trying to do. Really, the only reason I want to talk about this watch, and let me first show you this timepiece. Again, plain Jane watch. Hours and minutes, that's all you get. It's a manual wind, so it's not even an automatic watch. What makes this watch so amazing is its size. Look how thin this piece is. It's absolutely ridiculous how thin this watch is. Let me put this in perspective for you. I actually have another one here, which is its older brother, but in the power reserve. And I'm not gonna take the plastic off of this one for a reason, and I'll show you why in a second. Watch this. I'm gonna take the power reserve on top. I'm gonna put the plain Jane piece, and I'm gonna put them together, and then I'm gonna take the Harry Winston. Now look at that. These two watches combined are actually thinner than the Harry Winston. Let's do the AP for a second. Here's your AP. And again, the Royal Oak line from AP is actually considered to be the thinner watch. The offshores are much thicker, but the Royal Oak is actually the thinner line from Royal Oak. And yet, again, look at that. Both of them combined are about the size of the AP. Pretty crazy, right? What's so special to me about this particular Piaget, or this one for that matter, sometimes all I want to do is wear just that, a watch. A plain Jane watch. No frills, no thrills, no complications, just something that's simply going to show me the time. Perfect watch for a suit, perfect watch for if you're just wearing a dress shirt, and a perfect watch if you don't want something busy and you're tired of looking at a busy dial such as that of a Harry Winston and having a hard time telling time. A lot of these complicated pieces, people that, you know, whose vision maybe not 20/20, they have a hard time telling time on these things, especially when the watches are designed funky, especially like some of these dual times. I mean, look at this. Put the two side by side. Which one is easier to tell time off the glance? I mean, right off the bat, you know what time it is looking at the Piaget, but not the Harry Winston. And that's what sometimes people want. They want simplicity, they want plain Jane, they want just a watch, but they still want it from a high-end manufacturer. They still want it to be gold, they still want it to make a statement. And guess what? This makes an understated statement. That's what this watch does. For somebody who's conservative, wants to be conservative at this very moment, to each his own. You know, it all depends on the situation. You know, there are some situations, whether it's in the corporate world or whether it's in the business world, where you don't want to come in wearing a big clunker crusted out with diamonds, not to offend anybody, because some people find those things offensive. Again, every watch has its place, so to speak. Of course, I'm not one of those people. I wear what I like all the time and when I like to do so. But sometimes you just need to make a statement without overdoing it. And this is really the perfect watch. This thing retails for $16,000. 3 years back, you'd be hard-pressed to get 15 to 20% off on this watch because of how hot Piaget was in the Asian market. Today, that hype has calmed down. The Asian market has calmed down, and you can find these watches discounted up to 30% off retail, which makes it not a bad deal for around $10,000 from a major manufacturer like Piaget. Well, guys, last but not least, as I always do, I'm going to show you what's on my wrist, and today I went with the Richard Mille RM1102 in white gold. An oldie but a goodie, as they say. A watch that's already discontinued. Now they have the 003s, as you guys know. Again, what's to say about the Richard Mille? It's the hype. You know, sometimes I have to wear the latest, the greatest, and the hottest out there today because, you know, I have a sort of a role to fill. I am a watch dealer, and people do pay attention to what I wear on my wrist. I remember buying this watch for under $50,000 back in the day when they first came out. In fact, the cheapest one I've ever paid for, I think, was $48,000. Today, this watch, pre-owned, secondhand, trades at $115,000. What a crazy world we live in today when it comes to Richard Mille, but I've talked about that in previous episodes. You guys are welcome to check those out. Guys, thank you once again for joining me. As a favor, I ask you that you share my videos. And the reason I say that is because my channel only grows organically from viewers like yourself. And also, don't forget to hit the like button. It's very important. When you hit that like button, YouTube knows that my videos are important and relevant, and therefore brings him up to the top. I'm not sure how this algorithm works, but nevertheless, I know that it's important for you guys to subscribe, like, and share my videos. So I ask you that you take a moment and do that. And I'll see you guys next time for more watch reviews and other videos.